I know it's going to sound like everyone thinks this, but I see a lot of people in Missouri Synod dour and think we're in trouble. I see nothing but positive skies ahead in the sense of I think there's more advantages that we have than we realize. The work is going to be there. It's going to be hard. Nothing's going to be easy. But I do think that I see advantages and great things ahead of us. And I'm not Pollyannish about it, but I am also not dour. I don't think the Synod's going to collapse tomorrow or confessional Lutheranism is dead. I really don't see that. I think that our churches are going to get very strong because of this. And like I said, I have a church that 10 years ago, we were big enough that no one invited their friends or family to church. Now they do. That's amazing. And you're seeing that throughout the Synod. In my opinion, at least, when we falter, it's because and I'm talking the ministerium in Missouri Synod, shoot ourselves in the foot.
Welcome to Synod Stories, a show about the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. Besides learning about the LCMS National Convention, I started this podcast to learn more about the Synod at the circuit level. To dive down that path today, I have Pastor Justin Schmidt of Peace Lutheran Church in McMurray, Pennsylvania. He's a graduate of Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, and he's a circuit visitor in the English district. Pastor Schmidt, welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me and inviting me. I'm excited for this conversation.
All right. Just so we can get to know you a little better, what's your church background and what led you to become a pastor?
So I was raised in Pittsburgh, where I'm at now, actually. My home church is less than 20-minute drive from here. I was raised Lutheran, but in Pittsburgh, Lutheranism isn't a big deal. So I for the first 18 years, I didn't know I was in the Missouri Synod or English District or Eastern District. I didn't know any of that. I just knew I was a Lutheran, and in Pittsburgh, that was a knock. And we were definitely the least known Christian denomination in my area. And there's been no Missouri Synod, there's been no pastors in my lineage ever in the history, which is kind of a rare thing. And we're right on the edges, the ragged edges of Missouri Synod, really. And so that was how it started, where I started at a great experience with my youth, my pastors that I had. And then I was raised actually to probably be an engineer or a leader in society. I have a very, very good high school education. I started off at Virginia Tech studying mechanical engineering. And while I was there, I just knew that wasn't for me. And I had that gentle feeling of I want to study theology, being pastor. And I wasn't a kid that at high school anyone goes, oh, that's going to be a pastor one day. In fact, nobody said that. That's the joke. That until they actually saw me do it, they were like, I will never believe it. And so I tell young men, too, that if you're like, oh, I can't be a pastor, or no one thinks that, I was like, you are the men we're looking for exactly. And so that was the joy of it. And then one of the pastors said to me, I just saw you, I was doing something, maybe aqualighting or I don't know what. And he said, he goes, I know it's going to seem odd, but I see you doing this job. And it just put that little thought in my head. And it just grew and grew. And ironically, I played the game that a lot of Christians do with God, which is if you get me into this university I want to go into, I'll be a pastor. And if you don't, I'll be an engineer. I tell people, you can play that game, you always lose. And I didn't get into the school I wanted to. So I thought this was God's will in my life. And surely I did not know that. And when I came home at Christmas during my freshman year, I told my parents I wanted to transfer to Concordia, Ann Arbor, study theology, Greek and Hebrew, and become a pastor. And though we are 5 or 6 generations back, at least Lutheran, they were taken back by it because it just isn't in my family at all. It took all of us, it felt like it took a while for all of us to kind of get to peace with that. But once I hit the seminary, it became very apparent that it was going to happen. And they were very proud. They were super supportive, still are very supportive. I mean, I'd be half the person I would be. And even my ministries, they've just been excellent people, good, godly people. I'll give you one little hint on that. My parents said they'd pay for my sister and my undergraduate, but not graduate work, which was fine. So I was going off to seminary, which is a graduate program. And I didn't even ask my parents for help because I knew that was the thing. And my mother goes, well, we're starting a scholarship for a seminarian, and you're the first one to get it. And I said, you don't have to do that. And she goes, I'm not meeting Jesus one day when I had extra money in the bank and one of his pastors are struggling to make student loan payments. She goes, I just can't meet Jesus like that. I said, well, that's not really how Lutherans view things. And she goes, I don't care. I can't have that in my conscience. So, so they've been obviously very supportive of all that. And that's how I got to where I'm at. There are still parts in the United States where I say I'm a Lutheran and people go, are you a Christian? I was in rural Georgia, farming Georgia. And the farmer I was talking to, within 2 days of being with him, he went from, he wasn't sure if I was a Christian to he was willing to give me 3 acres to start a church in that community, which I said, that's a good way to starve to death, because if your community doesn't even know Lutherans are Christians, what would that be? And there's a church on every corner in these small towns in the deep South. Not that I wouldn't love to be a pastor there, but I'm not. It would be very difficult. But it is fun to be the outsider. In a lot of ways, I've always been the outsider. So when we talk about Lutheranism or being a pastor or being a Lutheran out in the, off on the saltwater coasts, I've always been comfortable with that, where a lot of our Midwest brothers who were raised in Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, they struggle a little bit with the idea of being not with their own kind. So that's kind of my story as it came about.
Those are wonderful stories. Those are really fun stories and wonderful. So for those not familiar with the English district, can you give a little primer on how it differs from the standard geographical district?
Sure. So there's 2 non-geographical districts. One is the Slovak, and they were their own synod. And when they came in, they actually, the Missouri Synod brought them in. Missouri Synod's not allowed to dissolve them in any way. Like, they are unconstitutionally, they're there. Now, they could dissolve themselves. The English district's a little different. Up until World War I, everyone was speaking German in our churches. But there were a few English-speaking churches, mostly in like Chicago, Detroit, big cities like that. But we weren't a lot of them, and they were struggling to kind of meld within Missouri St. Lutheran. Some of these guys had very poor German skills to almost none. And these congregations were doing their services in English. And so this district was formed for those guys to function and to work. I am sure we were the least loved in the litter, to say the least. And then after World War I, I read that it went from only about 40% of our congregations were still working in German. After World War II, maybe 2 or 3, and at this point, I only know of one that has a German service. I'm sure there's more, but I only know of one in Frankenmuth. So we're in 35 states and 1 province of Canada, and so we're all over the place. One of the advantages we have is we don't think, well, that artificial boundary of a district, I can't go beyond that to do mission work or church evangelism or church planting. We're kind of free spirits in that way. And we have a kind of a zeitgeist of starting churches that I've been in several other districts before here, all wonderful districts, by the way. But this is the only district where you really do get a lot of people talking about starting churches, starting mission plants, thinking outside the box. Which is wonderful, but it also makes us where some of our men are not even close to another English district pastor. So we ask those guys that when they actually go to the circuit events to go to the local one that's regional, so that you are still connected with your brothers. One of the things that, and I'm sure it'll come up on some level here, is I'm very excited that this isolationism that pastors have had in the past, in which I came up in, is slowly fading away, and more of a teamwork and working together is coming, and which I think is awesome of a thing to happen here. But we are definitely on the outside. One of my churches is very far away from any of us, so we do have to work hard to make that connectivity. But the other one is, if you want to be left alone, we'll leave you alone too, as it were. So
yeah, so that was my next question is how in the English district, how do they form circuits? Is it like just closest, like they try to not make it too big, or how do they parcel that out?
That's a difficult thing because the Synod has regulations of how size a circuit must be. So a lot of our circuits actually don't fulfill that anymore. So from a synodical perspective, like this convention coming up, we had to combine 3 circuits to make one voting circuit, which is fine. But that circuit went from the middle of Western PA down to Florida, basically. But one of our circuits has, as far as I can tell, it's not mine, down in Atlanta, Georgia, is 2 or 3 churches, and that's it, you know. So, but the circuits must touch for a voting thing for Synod. So it's not gerrymandered, but it will look like a gerrymandered district. But we did vote and all that stuff. But so that's how it works. But we try to have them touching, and if we can make them make sense, we definitely try to do that as much as possible. So there's not like there's no island per se, but there might be a long strip of land. And there's usually in a lot of the Missouri Synod, there are geographic churches relatively close to a lot of our guys as well. So we highly recommend, and we do, at least in Pittsburgh here, work with, we have SELC, the Slovaks, the Eastern District, and the English District. We're all working together. In fact, you're seeing pastors from other districts in our churches and stuff like that, like in dual parishes. So the 3 district presidents, we are trying to get them on board, and they basically is that this is hard enough in Pittsburgh, but if we can work together and it makes sense. The problem the English district has, to be blunt with you, is a lot of district presidents and some district officials think that we're trying to steal churches from them. And there's some truth to that in the sense that we have gotten churches from other districts, no doubt about it, but we've also given back churches who asked to go back into their one, which they forget about constantly, which I like to remind them. And we're not looking to do that. Like, I want my circuit to be bigger. We're trying to plant churches, not take another church. But if I can work with one of our other circuits or districts, I definitely will. And then the one district, in my experience, the only one we actually took from a district, they wanted to shut it down, and they were done with it, and they were happy to hand it to us. And now that church actually has a full-time pastor. So, and they're happy, we're happy, everyone's happy. So, you know, and then one of the churches we took on, actually, we took was an ELCA church in Pittsburgh, which is an interesting story, too. Maybe if you're interested or not, I'll let you ask it. But that was a fascinating thing, too. So we're more in, when everyone else has given up on the area, I joke, the English district pastors are just crazy enough to take it. So, yeah.
So very cool. What are the unique challenges of being an English district circuit visitor?
Yeah, the distance in between churches is your biggest problem. I did look it up. Between my most northern church, which is in Slippery Rock, which is a university town, to Bridgeport, which is in the middle of West Virginia, is 150 miles. And it's a 2-hour and 30-minute drive to go. And it's all highway, luckily, but that's with highway, that's the case. It just goes down the western spine of Western PA, so north to south. And so that's very hard for us to get together. We meet at my church, which is a little self-serving. I don't like it, but I am the middle church of the space. I don't mind driving at all. I kind of like it, but our brother in West Virginia, by the time he gets up to here, he's already been in the car for an hour and a half. You know, and if he goes into the city churches, it's 15 miles, but it's 45 minutes of driving. So, you know, the highway's so much easier. So I do feel guilty about it, but we meet here, and then we also meet for our Pittsburgh Pastors Association in the city of Pittsburgh itself. But our extreme ends sometimes come and sometimes don't because of that. And so that's how that works.
Okay. How many congregations are in the circuit, and what's the range of congregational sizes?
Sure. So I would say everything from a mission start to 40 to 50 up to 120 a Sunday. That would be it. Like I said, most of them are very healthy, actually. None of them are in my circuit we've got to watch out. They might be falling off. And some are bigger in different locations. We have, ironically, because of that, we have everything you could want in types of churches we have. So I'll go from north to south. Slippery Rock, which is a country small town with a university in it. Okay, so There's that. You come down in the city, and we have First Trinity, which is kind of the mother church of Lutheranism in Pittsburgh. And that is in the deep heart of Oakland, the city, Pittsburgh proper. That church has a full-time pastor as well as a campus pastor as well.
Nice.
So they have a team. You go west from there to Oakmont, which if you know golf, that's where one of the big tournaments they do. And that church there is in a very wealthy area. And they have, ironically, most of the members actually don't live in Oakmont because the cost of living, but they're healthy. That's where Pastor or Dr. Kuntz is at. And they have a K through 12 as well, so they're doing excellent. And they just bought a high school building, and they're building a gymnasium, so they're moving forward. My wife actually works out there 2 days a week as well. You come to the southernmost part of Pittsburgh, that's my church, definitely suburban, white-collar church. Again, very stable in that way. And then you keep driving south into West Virginia, and we have St. John's, which is in Bridgeport, which is Clarksburg. It's kind of like a dual city. Bridgeport's nice. They have a nice church. That's the mission church that has a full-time pastor now. They are we rent the building from the Episcopalians. We would love to buy that building, but you know, what people think things are worth and what they want it to be and all that stuff. So if they don't get that building, they plan to build. They're working towards building and all that stuff. And then we have the ELCA church we took over, which was up back in the city of Pittsburgh, Holy Cross. And that's a mission start, so it's not an official congregation. It's off of First Trinity. And they have a pastor full-time too. Actually, we have two pastors and two congregations. And that community was dying. It became a church desert. It used to have all these churches. They all closed, and we had no representation there. And ironically, once they closed, I think the Missouri Synod was like, now we're ready to go into this place because there's nobody else there. And it's a very interesting and hard poverty kind of area, but we're doing really good work. The ELCA, they had that church there forever and a day, so the community just thinks of it as a Lutheran church. As like I said, in Pittsburgh, Missouri Synod and ELCA, if you're not a Lutheran, that doesn't mean anything here. And and they have food banks, clothing and all that stuff, so charitable work. The pastors are working really hard. How we got the building, I guess it's a cute story, was we started catechizing their members actually in the library, and they were still a member of the ELCA, and they were going to close. And we said, you know, the ELCA's constitutions are all the same in every congregation, so their bishops know their constitutions. I'll try not to use negative terms, so I don't want to be on a film breaking the 8th commandment, but I'll just say they know their constitution. So what we said is, but they're allowed as a congregation to sell their building to buy another building. So we bought, while they were still a congregation, we bought the building for $1. And then they closed as a congregation and then redid. Now we had to pay legal fees, so it's probably about $7,000 or $8,000. They were super mad at us, to be blunt with you. They felt like it was dirty pool. I feel like you were closing that church anyways. And the problem is people said, well, it's for insurance purposes worth, what, $300,000-$400,000. It's not worth $40,000 on a good day. I mean, it's just the way it is. But they had this idea that they were going to gain all this money that they didn't gain, and they felt we did something inappropriate. But that's not, that's really, the people wanted to keep their church. The ELCA was not giving them a pastor, and it was a long story like that. And so I don't feel guilty. Now, if we turn around and sold it for $1 million, then I'd be like, well, that seems inappropriate. But I can assure you, we're here to bring Christ into that community. So that's our congregations, as it were. So my point is, urban, country, suburban, universities, we have it all in my circuits. And that's pretty typical. The English district will have a lot of that kind of, that way of doing things.
Cool. So it doesn't seem like anybody's currently calling. Is that right?
Thankfully, my last open call was filled 3 weeks ago.
Wow, nice.
When I took on this job, I have turned over every pastor but one in my circuit.
Wow. And
I've had exactly 6 days without a calling congregation. So now I'm up to 30 days or 20 some days. So I feel good. I have one left. But the interesting thing is, though that's difficult, this is the first time I've been a circuit visitor. I brought my own, I don't know, the way you see the world into it. And one of the things I told these churches is, I don't want you calling the guy that's going to show up. I want you calling the man that you believe is the right man. And if you go, he's never going to take this call, you call him if you believe that and make him say no to you. And I'm very adamant on this because I don't think the attitude of, well, personally, a bad pastor can destroy a church. A vacant church is just stagnant, which is, in my view, can be resurrected relatively quickly, and they are. And so they've all bought into this of calling the right man who they want, not doing this, he won't money, or who wants to move to Pittsburgh, or any of those things. And they've had very good success with it. It took a little longer, I grant it, but we are getting. So the point is I feel like my brothers in my circuit are amazing. My motto is, the goal is I'll be the weakest pastor in my circuit. If that becomes the case, I will be completely happy, because that means that I have great brothers around me doing amazing work, and I want to be part of that. And so we have one. It's not vacant now. Every so often, someone interviews that pastor, and I'm like, but it is what it is.
So,
Yeah.
and then you don't have any multi-point parishes in circuit currently, or do you?
We do. Well, the one in Slippery Rock works with the church in Sharon, which is an SELC church. So the pastor is actually an SELC pastor. Okay. Then the other one is, I worked most of my career actually in dual and tri-point churches, so I'm very comfortable with those. And I'm trying to plant a church myself right now to make it a dual. And my goal is actually to plant it and then plant another one and then make that a dual parish on its own. Because, or even three, there's three communities. Because the way I look at it is, if a church can afford a third of a pastor, and that's just the way it's going to be, then let's get three churches that can afford a third and have a full-time minister here. And I've done dual parish work. It works fine. It's better than not having a pastor there. And I tell, without a pastor, churches really struggle to move forward in any way. And what I tell the churches, even when I go in there, is I don't close churches, ever. My only goal is word and sacrament ministry in this building. And I will do all that I can. But everything else is up for discussion. If we have to dual parish out, work with other churches, other districts, whatever it is, within the confines of, I would say, proper Missouri Synod land. I'm not working with Presbyterians or anything of that nature. And so, and so they get that. And when those churches, because I also work in Pittsburgh I'm the Pittsburgh Area Lutheran Ministries. I'm the urban, I run the urban ministry for them. And I have to walk in and say, when you're ready, when you're so tried up everything and nothing's working and you don't want to quit, that's when I want to walk in the room. Because the things that you're trying to do aren't probably going to work, but you're not going to listen to me anyways. But once you get to that point, they're actually very open to new ideas and new thoughts. And I don't mean new, because quite frankly, I don't do anything new, but new in the sense of what they didn't do before. You know, you have a lovely Oktoberfest every year. Yes. The community comes great. How many members have you gained from that Oktoberfest? 0. Continue to do the Oktoberfest. It's wonderful outreach into the community. But don't think that's going to generate members. Well, then how do you do that, Pastor? Well, that's hard work. Slow, grinding work. And when you call the right pastors, it happens. And if you don't, it won't. And different pastors have different skill sets. Some pastors, they need to walk into a 120th Sunday, fully formed church that's doing well, and that's great. They shouldn't show up to some of my churches. I need a guy that's hungry, wants to prove themselves, who likes the idea of building a church, that kind of thing. So
very cool. It has very definitely a different feel from I'm in the CNH, and so it definitely different thought, or not, it's just a different feel, I guess I would say. Yeah,
it's definitely a different. Yeah, mavericks in some ways,
Yeah.
in the positive way of that word. And then, so I'm very comfortable, as you can probably tell. I work with the SELC in the Eastern District on all sorts of different things, and even their district presidents keep saying we're seeing something in Pittsburgh, and part of it is, and part of it's not Pittsburgh or me. The younger generation just does things differently, and some better and some worse, but the better is actually very good. So. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. So as a circuit visitor, what does how much of your week to week day to day is consumed by circuit visitor kind of thing?
Well, the big thing on it, like a daily thing, is pray for my churches, my pastors, for their families. A lot of times the families get left behind. So I try to ask, how's your wife? How's your kids? That kind of thing. Depending on a vacancy, how much more or less of the time. Without a vacancy, which hopefully the Lord will grant me a few months of that, is setting up and making sure that the winkles are taken care of, or the circuit meetings, making sure data gets out for the other meetings, any paperwork that needs to get done. And usually once a month I'll try to make a phone call. It doesn't always work to the pastors, or actually drive down and have a cup of coffee with them as well. I try to do that. There's nothing wrong with the phone and stuff, but I just think that's the case there, to see that I care and I'm involved. If Pastor Kuntz, for example, he has a school, and if he needs to go out of town, he needs someone to do chapel, I say, I'm here for you 100%. If you just need a break from chapel, you come get me. I will drive up to it. I'm happy to do that. And so things like that as well, if I can support their ministries. But on a day-to-day level, it's not really as much as you would think. I have my own congregation, and that takes up the bulk of my time. And I do probably about once a week get one of my brother pastors calling and asking questions about, because they're younger pastors, not really how to do it, but how would you do this? Missouri Synod pastors don't like asking another pastor how to do something, but we are comfortable, how do you do this? And which I understand completely. And some of it's just things that, just doing this job for 23 years, I've done things that they haven't. They're experiencing stuff for the first time that I've experienced 50 times already. So, and I'm happy to be part of that.
Very good. So what's the most rewarding aspect of being a circuit visitor?
Honestly, it's working. I was thinking about when we install pastors or ordain them, which is awesome. It really is. But working with brother pastors now that we are more of a team has been just amazing. I've been wanting it my whole ministry, and it's finally coming about with these younger guys, and I love that we eat lunch together when we come together. When we do events together, we're comfortable, we're friends, we laugh. I was at a continuing ed thing this summer, and one of the professors from one of the seminaries was there, and we went up, and we were staying 2 nights in a hotel. And part of what we try to always do, because of the distance, is to build in some social time, some downtime, sometimes that's the best time where a man will actually start speaking his problems or truths. And so it was very fascinating, because the first night we're all laughing, making fun of each other, and really working together. And I don't think and is a synodical, one of our seminary professors, and a good guy, he sat there quietly. I think he didn't believe what he was watching. And the next night he relaxed enough, and we started talking and laughing and saying truth. And the younger guys were picking on me because I said something stupid, and he just couldn't believe it. I was laughing and all this stuff, and he said things, and he could tell that he kind of lost his, this is a safe place where we can even disagree, and there's no arguing going on. And we're relatively the same and think, I guess, a little bit, whatever that means. And then the next day he's like, you got something here I didn't think was in. He goes, I actually have hope for the Synod again, because he could see us working. And there was all 3 districts was in that continuing ed module. But the idea that a young guy can call me out on something, and I didn't walk away mad or even argue, but listen and talk, but also just laugh about life and do fun things, and be there for each other. Guys on vacation or something of that nature. How do we backfill and help each other in a very comfortable way? So I just thought it was interesting. This professor was like, I actually think this makes me give it hope. And I said, well, me too, because I have friends in other parts of the United States in big cities, and I'm trying to help them do what we do in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. I think Cleveland and Detroit should be the next two places we do this. That way we can work together more, because it feels very alone in the Missouri Synod when you're not in the Midwest. You can be very, very alone. And not only is that depressing, it also lets the devil whisper in your ears and things that you don't need to hear or can really hurt you, because you've become isolated from your brothers, and which I have seen in the past, where once a month I see most of these men at least once, and they see me. And if they're moping or I'm moping or if I'm down, there's that kind of thing. We also, a lot of the brothers do confession and absolution with each other as well. And for the pastors, that's for these young guys in particular, I like it, but they consider it critical to their ministry. So that's wonderful too. So that holds us in Christ's arms tighter, in my opinion, at least.
Nice. So, and on the flip side, what is the most difficult part of the role?
I have no authority. Zero authority. I represent the district president when he wants me to be there and stuff like that. But the other thing is, I have to, whatever he wants, I have to. So I tell them, this isn't Pastor Schmidt. I am Circuit Visitor Schmidt, and to understand that. And I was in the military for several years as a chaplain, so I understand doing that. That doesn't even bother me. But people sometimes think that I have more authority. Or the other one is, when I say something they like, then they give me all this authority. And when they don't like it, all of a sudden they're like, you have no authority over us. And so as an advisory role, I have to get people to buy into things without any authority over it. I'm comfortable with that. My church is this. If you think about it, a pastor in a church, I don't pay anyone to be in this church. So I have to work with them in that same kind of way. I do have more authority, I guess, as a pastor in the church. But even that goes only so far with people. And so the lack of that. And I've had some churches that have had problems with district or synod, and they feel the need to take it out on me. And that's okay. I'm a big boy, but I'm like, you know, I'm not the bishop, and I'm not President Harrison, right? And you know I'm not going to be those people ever. Like, statistically, that's not going to happen. And I've made peace with it. You should too. And even when I show them successes with churches I've worked with, sometimes it's difficult for them to buy into, I guess, the way I'm trying to lead and push and pull. But I say to them, I don't care if you hate me at the end of the day. I only have my own congregation. But if the pastor that comes in that you love and you're doing great, that's all I need. I don't need any more than that. If you want to judge me, at least look at the churches I've helped and ask them not how they liked working with me or not. Again, who cares? Are you happy with the end results or not? And my circuit's pretty peaceful place right now. So.
Nice. So if there was something you could change about the way that the circuit functioned, is there anything you would change about them?
Yeah. I thought about that question. I've been for 23 years in the Missouri Synod that I think I've been institutionalized to think this is just the way it is and that's all it can be. I would like to see the church have a better title for us, a more liturgical or biblical title, and maybe have a little bit more, and again, I'm hoping to not have this job forever, but to have the respect given to it, like we have these honorary names, because the lay people don't know what to do with that, what I am, and then, and again, just to help people understand that. So I'm not looking for power or authority, and I think Roman Catholicism does this well. They have honorific names for people that work in the priesthood. And it's not that they're not over the bishop or even anything, but it helps the people understand, they have a special title for a special purpose. I think that would be helpful. I'm one where I have a bishop. The SELC in the English district, we have bishops, and district presidents is the same. It's in our constitutions. I like the term bishop. It's a theological term. It's a biblical term. Non-believers and Christians of other denominations understand when we say bishop. They do not understand what a district president is. And so I call all the district presidents bishops. So if you hear me say that over time, I apologize. However, mine is a bishop. And it's funny because I've thought this for 20 some years. So when I got into this district, the English district, I was so happy to actually get to use it and not looked at it as strange. And I'm not a high church guy, by the way. It's not a high church thing. I'm not looking for ecclesiastical authority over me. What I'm looking for is words that sound biblical, sound Christian, sound historic. And that's where we're at with that.
Nice. That's nice. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So, which I think is funny. She'll be like, talk to pastor. And I'm like, you can use my first name. She goes, not in church. So,
yeah. So what advice might you give a pastor who is considering become a circuit visitor or a better named in the future role?
Sure. Well, go circuit visitor. It's fine. Yeah. I don't have a name, so I produced a problem with no solution. I think that you have to understand that it is going to take, you better have your church in a very stable place, because it's going to take 5 to 10% of your time away from that church, depending on what's going on, sometimes less, sometimes more. So if you're super active in a church, or your church has a lot of fires you're putting out, or you're just trying to build, and your time is super valuable, this is probably going to be a very difficult position with you. Dr. Kuntz kind of alluded to this. When those guys say, yeah, sure, I'll do the job because no one else does, not much happens, which is fine. The church will continue on. But I don't believe in doing things halfway like that. In general, I'd say no if I couldn't do it. But the big thing is to understand it will take time away from your church, and make sure your church understands that this is going to happen, and that they're at least aware of it, so they don't feel like they're paying for something that they're not getting a result in. I'm very lucky in my church. We all inherit the churches we have. And the pastor before me became the district president, Bishop Hardy. And so they had a very good sense of not only the local work, but also regionally in Pittsburgh, as well as district and synod-wide. So they don't balk at those types of things. This is my last year. I'm the senior rep for the LWML English district. So every so often I have to go out of town for that. They're like, yep, that's normal, because my church is used to that. Some churches would really struggle with that. So you have to educate your church too on it will be a meeting here, a time here. It's very, and sadly, some district circuits, no one wants to do it. And so they literally draw straws and the guy doesn't do anything. And, okay, but that's not helpful, I guess.
I guess that brings a whole new respect from, because our pastor, he's been circuit visitor on and off for as long as I've been at our congregation. So like 20 years he's been off. I think there were two cycles where he wasn't, but he's been the circuit visitor, and we do have an appreciation of, because we have multiple struggling congregations and calling congregations, and so he's always going to call committee meetings and trying to guide them towards a decision, or like a reality check. There's a lot of our older and having trouble with finances, but they think they can still call a pastor, but they really should be turning into a multi-point parish, and they just refuse. It's like, so I've heard the stories, but it's a new appreciation for that.
Yeah, and that's where I talk about with these churches. It's like either you do multi-parish or you die. Your choice. And I've watched churches basically say, I'll die, and you died. And we've closed churches like that. And I've seen it where they said no, and then two other churches got together, and then they become super desperate. And we're like, you had the opportunity to control your destiny. Now these two churches decide if they want you in or not. And if they say no, that's the case. Now, are you, I believe, are you in California?
Yep, CNH, in Silicon Valley.
Oh, Silicon Valley, okay. Yeah. I have a good friend who is a pastor down in Southern California, Los Angeles area. Okay. You guys have a very different, great pastors out there, by the way. I think California's maligned in a way that it's inappropriate, but I've met some really great pastors doing really good work, and we have a few churches in California too.
Yep, we have we have a wide spectrum of on the synodical spectrum. We have it all, and so yeah, I think that's part of why we get the reputation we do. I actually I grew up in San Francisco, and when West Portal was an English district church that we used to play basketball against them. But that's how I remember them.
Sure, sure.
So, like you mentioned, you have winkles. What are your winkles like?
Sure.
Like it is, it's there's the distance to make attendance, but then what like topics or what kind of things do you discuss at your winkle?
Sure. So we, for us, we meet because of other events 5 times a year. So that's what we meet. But there's other events. So if you come to everything, you'll meet at least 9 to 10 times a year. So so we don't double up work because of travel and stuff. We get together and we'll have, like coffee, donuts, and that kind of thing. We have an opening chapel service depending on what the pastor is doing it, from Vespers, Matins, something small, something big. They get to do that. That's usually, that kind of thing. And that's very, well loved. And then we'll get together and we'll do an hour, give or take, of an exegetical study. And each pastor will be given that time. And in that study, I ask that I don't care if it's a 3-year or the 1-year lectionary, but please pick a text that's coming up. Or if there's a holiday or a unique holiday like a Saint Day or Ascension, and you want to, so something that we could use, we don't have to, but is coming. And most men do that anyways. And so it gives us a little bit helps you out a little bit. And then we do a theological study for an hour. And again, we rotate that through. And we're doing Reinhold Pieper's book on preaching. And then we're not going to do the whole book. Pastor Kuntz has a good background in it, so he's going to give us all the chapters that he says is worth our time. And so we're going to look at that book, too. It's a theological study. And then we do casuistry, which would be just going around the room, what's going on in your church, what do you need, any problems, any issues. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes it'll come pretty deep stuff. I'm struggling with an elder, or I'm struggling with depression, or we're not making our money, or whatever the case is. And so that's a safe place for that as well. Sometimes I've had it where I did something, I'm not sure if it was theologically correct, and we discuss it. And sometimes it wasn't, no one's going to hell over it, but it was like, well, that's not really a great practice. And no one was calling Synod to have anyone removed, or anything of that nature. Winkel, if you don't know, is an old German carpenter term for the corner of the room. And it was the idea that pastors went off to the corner to talk. And so that's the point of it. I say that because a lot of people don't even know. That's such a weird word. And again, being a Missouri St. Lutheran, you're like, we use this word all the time. If I say this to other churches and pastors, they're like, what is that? So I've always, and I'm on the edge of Lutheranism, Missouri Synod here in Pittsburgh. So my members, that's not a word they really know either. So, but I do find it very helpful that that casuistry in particular gives us an opportunity to speak and to discuss things as necessary, and that's been very helpful. Then we eat lunch. We have fellowship of food. We get together and then we eat, which is very important. I think people don't understand this. I think biblically, I can make the argument that our Lord is eating constantly with people. This is where you build fellowship and community and love for each other. I preach to my church. Families should be eating together. You need to have this, and food is important to that, and to that kind of thing. And if Christ would spend that time doing it, so do we. The older pastors struggle a little bit with some of this. They think this is a lot of wasted time in some ways. Let's just get what needs to be done and move on. And my view of it is, it's never a waste of time, and you don't know how God's going to work. And even if you don't get anything out of it, you might be sitting there doing casuistry, and one of your brother pastors might bring up something, and you might be the exact person God wants them in their life at that moment to help them. And if you're not there, you can't do it. What I'm suggesting here is that we actually minister to each other as well. And I believe in that completely. But the other one is, sometimes you just got to eat food and laugh at jokes and ask how the family's doing. That's life.
Very nice, very nice. So within the circuit, what is like the interactions between congregations? Do they work together on anything, or I'm interested in that? Yeah, so we do definitely try. With distance, we put out data and information, but when we do that, you're going to find it's more not the circuit, but the Pittsburgh region. So it's bigger than just the circuit. But so like the region wanted to do a
a picnic for homeschoolers. And my church was in the middle of the churches, and I didn't have any homeschoolers in my church. They had just moved. And they said, can we use your church? Absolutely. We used my church. I set it all up, all that kind of stuff to help them. Pastor Greenway was the one that was in charge of all that. But so even though I wasn't gaining anything from that, we were working together. We tried to do picnics together. Any data that's coming out, Oktoberfest, things of that nature. So yes, we do as a circuit try to work together, but in this area, that's just too small of thinking for us. We try to work together. Pastor Kunz's church has a strawberry festival. We go over to that. That for me, that's a long drive through terrible traffic. But we go over there, and I like to say that our circuit is probably one of the best. Whenever we have in Pittsburgh area a new pastor coming in to be ordained or installed, we probably the best percentage of showing up to it too. So I'm very proud of that because it's important for the congregations to see the pastors there and that they're being supported as well. These are not just nice things. The laity are struggling with their faith and with church in their community, and to see 20 pastors walk in fully robed, singing and saying, "We're here for you as well and for your pastor," that lifts them up in a way that I think the ministerium sometimes doesn't really understand. When they hear, I'm not a good singer. In fact, I'm an awful singer. But a lot of our men are very good singers, but most of our churches, the men don't sing a lot. So when they hear 15, 14 really good male voices, they all say the same thing. That was amazing to hear. I wish you'd go to the seminary or in call day or something of that nature, because the women don't have a chance. The voices are so strong, worthy of just for that alone. Again, we're so far away from the center of Lutheranism that whenever we have a big event, it feels big and great. We also we do a regional Reformation service every year at First Trinity, things of that nature. We have a Lutheran choir. We have a Concordia Lutheran Ministries, which is a nursing home. It's a huge industry at this point. We have probably the biggest one in Missouri Synod. And so we work with that. We work with their chaplains. Their chaplains work with us. I do a Bible study in one of the nursing homes, not for pay, just because they asked me to do it, and I'm happy to do it. And that CLM, Concordia Lutheran, actually fiscally supports a lot of our work too. So it's a healthy ecosystem like that.
Cool. Very nice. Wow. I kind of wish that I think we have that older mentality of like, we didn't have to worry. We didn't have to lean on any congregations before. And we really don't even consider doing, things where we talk to each other much. And that's why I wanted to talk to various circuit visitors to see how they're addressing these kind of things. So thank you very much. Those are great stories. So I'd like to ask, what is your, the greatest joys and blessing in your circuit, in the life of your circuit?
Well, I'll say because of the youth coming in and because of the title of the closing of churches have all happened in the 90s and the aughts. That's all ended. And now you see the tide coming back in, and you're seeing positive. The more work you put into it, the more positive you're getting out of it. The Lord does bless labor, and so we're seeing that. We're not closing any more churches in Pittsburgh. In fact, the few that we closed, which happened way before I was here, the regret, we'll never get back into those communities. It's a shame. But so the joy is seeing, in a lot of ways, the rebirth. If we're going to use a farming analogy, winter's over and we're in early spring, early spring, and some can see it and some can't. And the other thing I find joy with is because we're not Iowa or Michigan, we're like this huge group. So we're not held back by, it used to be this way. It used to be that way. Now, some of our older members remember when VBS had 500 kids. The church I was baptized in, I had the bulletin from it. The Sunday, this is a Lutheran church, they had 380 in Sunday school and 540 in church that Sunday. And that's in 1974. That church still exists. They're not getting those numbers anymore. but no one has memories of that stuff. So these young men coming up, they grew up in churches just like this, so they understand the struggles and the fight, and they're not depressed because it's half empty. They see this as just work they got to do, and that's exciting to me. And when churches are like, we want to do, when I say something to them like, this isn't working, they're now listening to that. And then I also tell them the things that you've been told that will work to just turn your church around won't work either, by the way. I said, if I could figure out a way to turn a church around easily, I'd write a book, Be a Millionaire and Quit. Okay, you can't hire a praise band. You can't put a coffee shop in. You can't. That's not going to do it. It's hard work and it's people work. And the pastors who understand that, and the churches that do, they get it. And there's no shortcut. There's no program. There's no anything. It's just like my members now, they've gotten to the point now where they're inviting their friends, their families to my Bible studies, not to church. And I said, that's where you want to start them off at. It's safer. It's fine. You might ask about this later. We do have an online presence with our worship. And so I tell people, watch our service. See what it's like. And the other thing with visitors, I tell them too, because they're either Roman Catholic or evangelicals in Pittsburgh or Orthodox, is you have to come to my service 3 times to get it. And they usually do. And they all said the same thing, ironically. They hate the music, the hymn music. Because it's not the tunes they're used to. But I said, I don't want you to sing anymore. Just read the lyrics as we sing. And they all said, those are the most powerful words I've ever read. And I'm like, that's my problem. So I don't believe going to liturgical worship or contemporary worship. That's not what's turning churches around. It's hard Christians talking to their friends and their families and their loved ones and not giving up, and also being decent Christians to boot. Lutherans still have a very high view in our society as decent folk. We really do. And I remind them that they have a responsibility to keep that up as well.
So on the flip side, what are like the most significant challenges of the congregations and pastors that you guys are facing in your circuit?
What every pastor and synod and congregation is, we're living in a post-Christian, secular humanist, nihilist, agnostic, the quote-unquote non-world. The advantage is a lot of people have no negative or positive views of us. The difficulty is getting them to see the need for God in their life can be very difficult for a myriad of reasons. I tell my members, and they can't believe it, I meet people that don't know that Christmas is about the birth of Jesus in our own community. And you have to get that mindset differently. I discussed to my people, I said, really, let's simplify this down. All your job is to point to Jesus and say, follow him. Don't go in the morality and evolution and human sexuality and politics. Not that those things aren't there in some level. They don't know Jesus. You really have to be at kind of intentionally understanding this. And because of our society, when they talk about God, they want to talk about God either in the abstract or all those other hot button issues. And I work with a gentleman, a member of my church, with my mission plant church. And he said, when we were out talking, he says, you're like a ninja. Because they want to bring up these topics, and you never bite. And next thing you know, you're asking about Jesus and talking about Jesus. And I said, notice no one says anything negative about Jesus. Everyone has they might not know him, really know him. But no one says, I hate that guy, or he's a jerk, And so that's the starting point. He goes, it's amazing how, because I'm helping him in evangelism, he goes, I want to answer those questions that they have. And you are of no interest. And so one of my models to teach evangelism is Christ at the well with the woman. I think this is the evangelism 101 thing, where she says things that are theologically wrong, historically wrong. Her life's a mess. And he's driving to him constantly. And he's not fixing every little problem that he's letting those go because he needs to get her to where he wants to get her, which is, you're looking at the Messiah. Come follow Jesus. And that's where we have to become better at in our society, in our churches, which the struggle is, a lot of these people, because Lutheranism doesn't have a very good evangelism background, it's not really a great place for us, sadly. And a lot of these people have looked to other denominations for their evangelism models, and those aren't working either. And so looking for a true confessional Lutheran evangelism model. I don't care if you think the earth's 6,000 years or 6 billion years old. I really just don't care. Whatever the answer is, our Lord knows, and that's it. But if you're not following Christ, I care deeply about that. And how do I discuss the authority of the Word of God when you don't know who Jesus even is, or even ever interested in that? Or you want to talk about God in an abstract. That's the devil. God is a incarnate man, and it's not abstract in any way. Once you pull through that, believe it or not, and showing the kindness and love and forgiveness of Christ, it becomes very easy, but it takes a lot of time and effort. But once you get them, they're fine. The other things I think Missouri Synod churches should also start remembering that a lot of Roman Catholics have been hurt by their church very much. And to be not only gentle and kind with them, but to see that that's an opportunity. I gain about 4 families a year that were Roman Catholic who just had enough. And they love our church. The one person said to me, the Missouri Synod is what Roman Catholics think their church is, even though it's not. And so they appreciate it, the sacramentalness of it, the Lord's Supper of it, even our public confession and absolution and worship. They love that. They're like, this is great. I wish my church did this, that kind of thing. And then ultimately, and I tell pastors, look, when these people come from other churches, you need to build a relationship with them. It's important because Roman Catholics have never had a relationship with their priest. Big evangelical churches, you don't have you think you have a relationship with that pastor, but that's smoke and mirrors. Like, I want to be invited to your kid's graduation party. I want to baptize. When you're after the wedding, I want to come to the reception. I want to ask you how your mother's doing because I actually know who she is. I want you to feel comfortable asking me for things that are, that relationship is critical to building a church, and that foundational. And the nice thing for me, at least, is my members are the long-term stable members. They're so comfortable with, like a visitor walk into my church, I'll be talking to him, I say, oh, excuse me for a minute. They're like, of course, Pastor, go do your job. They're not feeling like I've slighted them or anything like that, because they can see the work which they want done too. And so you got to build that community. And honestly, I've asked people who have visited the church, what do you think? Tell me the negatives. Give it to me straight. Did no one say anything to you? Were you lost? Did you didn't understand the worship? Was I dull and boring? Help me out here. You'd be surprised. People are willing to tell you. We live in the world of Yelp reviews. They will tell you if you ask. But fair warning to any pastor, if you ask, you can't get mad at what they say.
Nice. So it didn't sound like it, but do you guys have any difficulty with pulpit supply or anything along those lines?
We used to, but not anymore. We have a retired pastor in our community that he retired relatively young, which has been awesome for us to be on. And so he is a great ministry. He's a great pastor. I mean, he was 60. Young for us is 66, 67, mind you. So he has energy still, and he's a great man. Very confessional Lutheran too. So it's nice that he's supportive of it. He remembers not having men around. And so we have him, and we also have another retired pastor down in West Virginia. It's a little farther away, but we could pull him up. And I think part of it is because a lot of baby boomers are now really retiring. They're willing to do that work. They're just not willing to do day in and day out work. And it is necessary for regions and circuits to have a man that can do this, because we do need, I'm a big, I believe in rest. I believe in the idea of Sabbath, and a pastor needs to be unplugged and down too. I tell, as a circuit visitor, when a pastor's struggling, I go to the elders and I say, when's the last time you went on vacation? And they go, we don't know. And I go, you have failed as an elder. And if the answer, he hasn't gone on vacation in 2 years, that is a failure on your part. You need to tell him, even if it's a staycation, if you sat on the money, you could still stay at home. Unplug, get a pastor to come in here. You need to rest. Again, using the scriptures, our Lord Jesus I think it's lost on us for whatever reason because of this, I call it Protestant work ethic, that our Lord literally goes away to pray, to rest, to Sabbath. We need to be able to do that too. We're not better than our Lord Jesus. And it'll make you a better pastor. And I tell the churches, do you want to burn them out or do you want to keep them? And the bishop I had before, Bishop Hardy, said to the churches, this is the cheapest form of compensation you can give. It's an excellent form. And in my church, which I recommend for any church, in the Constitution, it says every 5 years I get a 1-month sabbatical. And there is I cannot be asked, called. I am out for that month. And I could do whatever I want in that month. There's no anything. I don't have to give a report or anything. I spent, which I've never done before. I had my first one 3 years ago. I have never felt so refreshed in my life at the end of that. And I spent it with my family, by the way. I was with my children and I could do long-term things. It was amazing. I realized that I've never really unplugged. Really unplugged. I'm the idiot that leaves vacation because there's a funeral. That's me. And my elders are like, you can't go on vacation where you can drive back for a funeral. They're adamant about this. But I do tell them I've made that mistake of not going on vacation and stuff. It'll burn you out after a while. And so that's why, again, Pastor Kuntz with his school, if you need to go somewhere and do something, I'm happy to step in to help because I understand that's actually, a pastor with a school is working way harder than I ever will be working. And I recognize that completely.
All right. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I have one last question. And
Sure.
It's how do the pastors and congregations in your circuit view the synod and the district? How is your relationship with both those entities?
Yeah. I would say probably the English district pastors are some of the most proud of their district pastors I've ever been around. And I wear it with a little bit of pride too, and so I'll admit to that. But I've had I was in the Central Illinois district before this, in North Dakota was my first call, and I vicared in Wyoming. So I've had great experiences in all of them, great district presidents. But we have a very positive view, I would say, in general. And the nice thing about the English district, if you're getting a little I'm not real happy with them, you can just do your own thing and you're left alone too. So, and it's a really nice, in that way. I think in a lot of ways, because we're these outsiders, Synod and district are very far away from us. And because we're in Pittsburgh, which is the Wild West of Missouri Synod, as it were, is we don't expect much from them. We're not looking for much. We don't expect much. If it comes, it's great. Usually with Synod more than district, but both, they'll have this great program they want you to do, and they'll say it's easy, and it's not. It just isn't. So it's like if I have to do 10 hours of paperwork to run through a hoop, it's hard to justify it. I don't have a full-time business manager here and things of that. In reality, I think we're all positive. We're all proud of it, including, and in Pittsburgh too. So I'm with around 3 districts, but I would say the English district guys we're like the, I don't know I was in the military. I think we think we're Green Berets, and the rest are just infantry kind of thing. But it's not true. It really isn't true. But a lot of these, both the SELC and the Eastern District, they've had some hard headwinds against them. The nice thing about the English District is, even though we struggle here, we have other churches that are doing very well, so you have a sense of that. And we're also, lovely enough, down in Texas, there was the local community church planted, and they asked the English District instead of Texas District, so they recognized that was an interesting thing. And the other thing with the English district I think they appreciate is if you want to do contemporary worship, go ahead. You want to do liturgical worship, go ahead. You run your church. As a circuit visitor, because people were like, shouldn't the pastor district get involved in that church? I say 100%. A district president does not get involved with churches that are healthy. It's just they have other work that needs to get done. And just because that church does that differently, as long as they're theologically correct, Christ is the center, those types of things, those things that upset you, I get it. I have my own views. I'm not I'm not above it in any way. But that's not their job. So if you have a healthy church, and they're like, well, they're doing this, that, and the other thing, I'll be like, he's probably not going to get involved in that church. Your church, however, is $200,000 behind in maintenance. That's a problem we got to get involved in. And so that's the case. But the joy of it is, so if you're an English district church, you can kind of determine how much or how little the district or synod's really involved in your life. And that's been very healthy of a place too. And I would argue that sometimes you need it more and sometimes less. And that's the nature of a church. And it's always there for us. One of the things I'm very proud of is as a district, we tell every circuit, your job is every 10 years to build a church. Nice. And we actually put money aside in our budget to help with that. Not lots, but money. No other district's doing that. I've never been in a district that they're all trying to survive, not build. And this district's like, no, we build. And I find that just amazing. And if for nothing else, the fact that we're all on that same page, especially anyone under the age of 50 is really pulling that, even above the age of 50. But, when you're with older pastors, I love them to death. They're great. I truly do. But sometimes it's like you're letting 30 years of hard work get in the way a little bit. Squash the joy of the young guys. Yeah, you're right. They're like little puppies running around, but that's positive. We need that energy in the room. That energy is important. It was lacking in the Missouri Synod for a while, and it's back. And the young men we're sending, definitely you're seeing that kind of that next level, that gear of energy that's necessary. I know it's going to sound like everyone thinks this, but I see a lot of people in Missouri Synod dour and think we're in trouble. I see nothing but positive skies ahead in the sense of I think there's more advantages that we have than we realize. The work is going to be there. It's going to be hard. Nothing's going to be easy. But I do think that I see advantages and great things ahead of us. And I'm not Pollyannish about it, but I am also not dour. I don't think the Synod's going to collapse tomorrow or confessional Lutheranism is dead. I really don't see that. I think that our churches are going to get very strong because of this. And like I said, I have a church that 10 years ago, we were big enough that no one invited their friends or family to church. Now they do. That's amazing. And you're seeing that throughout the Synod. In my opinion, at least, when we falter, it's because and I'm talking the ministerium in Missouri Synod, shoot ourselves in the foot. That's a longer topic, probably for another podcast in another way. But I'll just say that I'm very excited for the future and glad to be part of it. And so that's my, I think the way, I guess, forward with our church body in every way, in our Synod and in our district.
Well, thank you, Pastor Schmidt. That was a great way to end it on a positive note and having a good outlook towards the future. So thank you again for joining me, and I really appreciate you talking to me. It was great hearing about your district or your circuit and your district. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, Jesus is the Lord of our church. It's easy to be positive. It's super easy.
All right. Thank you very much.